In this lesson, we're going to start completing the section on the right-hand side where we're going to be taking information from this part of the building. So all of this on the right is going to be an elevation since we're not cutting through any portion of this building. We're cutting through the pool, but that's about it. Everything else is just going to be a facade treatment. So because it is slightly further back than our cutting section line, we're going to be drawing all of this in very light, thin lines of grays, gray 8 and gray 9, just so that we can feel that distance of that recession, the way it is pulling back into the distance. So we can start off by picking these major lines, the corners of the walls, and we can draw a construction line down. Now if you'll remember from the beginning of the course, we drew a construction line which was done by typing XL, and that gives us an infinitely long line in two directions. Now a different one that I like to use for these type of situations is called a ray. So you just type in RAY and then start drawing rays from the corners downwards. So that allows you to choose a base point and then it draws an infinite ray in the direction that you click. So these rays can now be recolored so that you can see them a little bit clearer. And you can copy them across your drawing as well instead of recreating new ones every time. So now that we have those main walls in place, you can go and draw a horizontal line where the top of the roof is going to be, and you can also trim it according to that line using the trim command, and I'm going to trim the bottoms off according to this ground floor line. So then once you have that, we already have the top of the roof in place as well. I'm going to trim off both sides of this roof by selecting these, trimming that, and trimming that. So now I start to form the basis of that elevation. Now I can change the layer and the color to a wall in color 8, and I'll match properties with the rest of those other walls that we drew earlier. Now as far as this portion here, which adjoins the separate towers of this building, those are going to be slightly lower, at least the roof is going to be slightly lower than the roofs of the main part of the building. So let's start drawing that in, and we can draw about a 300 thickness to that. Most of this is going to get covered by the screen as that screen wraps up and around the roof. So we're going to look at how we can represent that screen. So you basically take your screen element, copy it down, and what you can do is you can just explode your entire screen, and you can change the properties. It should actually be called a window, or at least if you have a separate layer for that, you can relayer it at this point, and then we'll just stretch it downwards. So we're taking what we had in plan and we're basically going to manipulate it so that we can use it in elevation. So here this line will be slightly hidden. I'm going to mirror it to the other side. And I said it's going to be hidden because the screen is going to be hiding these portions of that wall. So here we make the decision whether the screen actually goes above the roof or whether it's going to stop just below it. And I'm going to leave it going just above, and all I need to do now is individually trim these sections. What I can also do instead of individually trimming it is I can delete this and I can just copy this portion here, and I can do it that way as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can do each of those different types of movements when you need to copy something. You don't always have to trim, you can just copy as well. So what I'm showing you are very, very easy things, but it's just quite nice when you know what workaround you can use and what tips and tricks you can use to speed up your workflow. So a lot of these things come through time, and it's hopefully going to help you when you do your work to be able to speed up certain things just by having a way of working, or at least a way of thinking. The main thing that we have done with this entire section is just work from the big things first. Get your heights in place, get your grids in place, and then start filling in all of the details. So I'm going to then do things like this window here as well. All of this can be done separately. Now the stairs, they're a separate issue all in itself, because drawing helix staircases or spiral staircases does get quite tricky. What you can do if you want to keep things rather simple is you can just estimate where that staircase is going to go if you're running out of time, and you can basically just draw the beginning and end sections of that stair and just draw at least a dashed line where that stair is actually happening. We know that this is going to be about 1 meter high, and we know that this is going to offset. So there's nothing really wrong with basically drawing an idea for what that staircase should look like. You can just take the main points along that stair and start drawing the main outline. You don't really have to go the route of drawing every single tread. Most clients will be perfectly fine with just an impression of what that stair would look like if it was exactly in that correct position. So again, this is a bit of a workaround. Perhaps you don't even need this part. And the other thing that you can do is you can start drawing in a couple of vertical lines just to show that the curvature of the balustrade or the handrail around that staircase is busy turning around. So again, just focus on the important parts, don't focus on all the details. Drawing this staircase in full detail is just going to take far too long for anyone to get done too accurately. So we know that the top of the handrail where that staircase is going to be at 1 meter, so that's where the staircase is going to end. And we know that this is the right hand portion. So I'm going to trim off all those excess areas, and there's going to be a balustrade at the top. So this can be drawn in much more detail. I've just done it extremely quickly. Not really accurately at all, but it just gives you an idea that you can always be quite impressionistic about certain things, and you can pretty much get away with quite a lot in that respect. So what I'm going to do now, just before the lesson is finished, is I'm going to touch on a few important elements that you would want to add to a section just before you go and call it finished. So the important things that we want to know are the top of the roof. So we can take this line and we can move it to the top of the slab, which is structurally the top of the roof slab, and then we also have the top of the roof. So you would want to separately demarcate what the highest part is of the roof, and this is mainly going to be regarding your height restrictions and all those things. So you'd want to actually measure what that height is. So in this case, we're going to have two separate dimensions. One is going to be the roof slab, so that's top of roof. Top of roof slab, and then the one right above it is going to be top of roof itself. So this you can separately dimension, and you can then work out by measuring the dimensions what that is. The other thing to remember is, just as we had our dimensions on our grid lines, you want to also start getting your basic heights in place on your sections too. So it's a good idea to know what your offsets are between your levels. So between the ground and the natural ground and the ground floor, between the upper level, or between each level, as well as between the top of the roof and the floor, or at least the ground level right at the bottom. So basically I'm stretching this right to there, and now I see that that is 9.4 meters. So generally we would want to have this in the other direction, like so. So it is pointing away from the object that is being measured. The smaller ones would be on the inside, and the large one would want to be on the outside. As well, if you can fit it all in, try to get the actual lines a little bit closer, or at least the text annotation a little bit closer, just so that you can start making your entire section a little bit more compact. Then you will need to have a look at other things like this and start moving them out of place so that everything has its correct position. So if you do that, you can then move your dimension line outwards, and then it all starts making sense. So the rest I'm going to do out of the recording time. I'm not going to bore you with all of the window tracing and basically the continuation of all of this detail. Also remember that just before I finish this lesson, we also want to go and label the rooms just as how we have done in plan. And remember as well that you can go and put internal dimensions between the floor and the ceiling so that you basically get an idea of all of those major heights that are busy working within that space. Since clients will always ask those questions, what is my ceiling height? What is my room width that you can see from the grid? But just those major heights are always coming up in questions. So make sure you get all that vital information in. And after that, we can start looking now in the next lesson at doing the elevation. But most of the summary that I will tell about the elevation will be exactly the same story as this section.